"I just wished I could be with my daughter this Christmas," the taxi driver said, trying to hold back tears. "I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas." She had no idea that the passenger sitting next to her was a millionaire. And what did he do next? Even she couldn't believe it. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. Let's continue. "Mummy, Santa Claus will be sad if you're not here when he arrives," Sophia's voice echoed in Clara's memory as she drove the yellow taxi through the congested streets of New York City. Those huge tear-filled eyes looking up when she knelt to say goodbye still haunted her. The tiny fingers holding the colorful pasta necklace she had made especially for Christmas. The smell of strawberry children's shampoo in her curly hair. "Mommy will be back soon, my love. I promise I'll be here before Santa Claus arrives." A lie. She knew it was a lie the moment the words left her mouth. The overdue rent, the eviction notice, the taxi payment, the medicine for her daughter's persistent cough. There was no way she could be home before midnight. Not if she wanted to keep a roof over her daughter's head in January. Clara blinked several times to ward off the tears threatening to fall. She couldn't afford to cry now. The app showed $143.50, less than half of what she needed to earn that night. Christmas Eve traffic made each ride longer, each red light a small torture. The traffic light turned green, and she accelerated the taxi, passing decorated shops and happy families carrying bags of gifts. The New York City sky was already darkening, the first stars appearing timidly through the metropolis's light pollution. Somewhere, her 4-year-old daughter was probably asking Mrs. Elvira for the 100th time when Mommy would arrive. "Santa Claus knows we're poor, Mommy." The innocent question Sophia had asked the week before came back to torment her. Clara had forced a smile and replied that Santa Claus brought presents to all good children in the world. It didn't matter if they were rich or poor, another promise she wouldn't be able to keep completely. The only gift she had managed to buy for her daughter was a small rag doll from a craft fair, using money she had saved by skipping a few meals during the week. The taxi stopped again in the congestion of Fifth Avenue, now completely lit up by Christmas decorations. On the radio, an advertisement insisted that there was no Christmas without a certain brand's chocolates. Clara changed the station irritably, stopping on one that played old American songs. The app vibrated, announcing a nearby ride. She accepted immediately, adjusting the rearview mirror and taking a deep breath, trying to recompose the professional expression passengers expected. She couldn't afford to lose positive ratings. Each star less meant fewer rides, less money, fewer chances to keep a roof over Sophia's head. She parked in front of a luxurious commercial building in the Midtown Manhattan area. A man in a dark suit stood at the entrance, talking on the phone with a serious expression. By his demeanor and clothing, Clara knew he was the type of client who might leave a good tip if he was satisfied with the service. The man hung up his phone when he saw the taxi stop and walked towards the vehicle. Clara forced a smile as he got into the back seat, bringing with him the discreet aroma of an expensive cologne. "Good evening," she said, glancing briefly in the rearview mirror. "Where are we going?" "The Insignia Hotel, please," he replied, his voice deep and controlled. Clara nodded and started the ride on the app. Her reflection in the mirror showed deep dark circles that her hurried morning makeup could no longer hide. December 24th, 7:18 p.m., and the fatigue of someone who had been on the street since 7 a.m. weighed on her shoulders. In the back seat, the man didn't immediately pick up his phone as most executives did. Instead, he looked out the window, observing the city adorned for Christmas. Clara adjusted the photo frame on the dashboard, where Sophia's smiling face seemed to watch her expectantly. The photo had been taken the previous Christmas, when they still lived in a better apartment, before the girl's father decided he no longer wanted responsibilities and disappeared without a trace. "Do you always work on Christmas Eve?" The passenger's voice interrupted her thoughts. The question caught Clara by surprise. Usually, passengers barely noticed her existence beyond her function of getting them to their destination. "Yes, sir, business is good this time of year," she replied automatically, omitting the whole truth behind that night's work. The taxi moved slowly through the congested traffic of Broadway. Families passed by on the sidewalks, smiling children holding hands with their parents. Somewhere in the city, Sophia was probably looking at the door with every sound, hoping it was her mother arriving. "Nice photo," the man commented, pointing to the frame on the dashboard. Your daughter? Clara felt her heart tighten. She usually avoided personal conversations with passengers, but there was something in his voice that didn't sound like mere casual curiosity. Yes, my daughter Sophia, she replied, allowing a genuine smile to briefly appear on her lips. She turned 4 last month. The man nodded, looking at the photo more closely. She must be excited for Santa Claus. No, the question hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to maintain her composure. Yes, very excited, she replied, her voice slightly trembling. She loves Christmas. A silence settled in the taxi as Clara maneuvered between cars. The entire city seemed to be in motion that night, everyone rushing to get home to their families, their dinners, their presents under the tree. Everyone but her. And wouldn't you prefer to be with her now? The man asked after a few moments. Clara quickly looked in the rear-view mirror, meeting the passenger's eyes. There was no malice or judgment there, just a genuine curiosity that completely disarmed her. Mommy, do you promise you'll be here when I wake up tomorrow? Sophia's voice echoed in her mind again, and Clara felt a lump in her throat. The passenger's question had struck at the core of her pain that night. I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas. The words escaped before she could contain them. Her voice was almost a whisper. But we can't always have what we want, can we? She immediately regretted her sincerity. Passengers didn't want to hear a taxi driver's problems, especially on Christmas Eve. He was probably just being polite, making small talk to pass the time during the ride. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you with personal problems, she quickly added, forcing a professional smile as she turned right onto Park Avenue. The man shifted in the back seat, looking again at Sophia's photo. And why aren't you with her? His voice now softer, as if he genuinely cared about the answer. Clara hesitated. Why was she confiding in a complete stranger? Perhaps it was the fatigue, perhaps the loneliness of that day, or simply the human need to share a burden that was becoming too heavy to carry alone. Because life isn't easy, she finally replied, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. I'm a single mother. The bills don't wait for Santa Claus. She didn't mention the overdue rent, nor the eviction notice, nor the expensive medicine, nor the nights she ate only bread and butter so Sophia could have a full meal. Some truths were too heavy to share with strangers. Through the rearview mirror, she noticed the man watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't pity. She would recognize that immediately. It seemed more like consideration. Doesn't your ex-husband help? He asked after a moment. He just disappeared when he found out I was pregnant, Clara replied, surprising herself again with her own sincerity. I don't know where he is, and honestly, I don't care. I only care about my daughter. A stubborn tear escaped and ran down her face. She quickly wiped it away, hoping the passenger hadn't noticed. The traffic light turned red again, and Clara took advantage of the pause to take a deep breath and compose herself. She couldn't afford to lose control. Now, what she didn't know was that the man in the back seat was no ordinary executive. Henry Baston, 41, owned one of the country's largest technology companies. The yellow taxi had merely been a choice for discretion that night, an attempt to go unnoticed in a city where his face frequently appeared in business magazines and social events. As he watched the woman struggling to hold back tears, something within him stirred. This was not the Christmas Eve he had planned, nor the kind of encounter he expected to have. But there was something in the silent dignity of that woman, in the way she tried to hide her pain while doing what was necessary for her daughter, that deeply touched him. How much longer do you intend to work today? Henry asked, looking at his wristwatch. Clara took a deep breath before replying, As long as it takes, sir. Probably until after midnight. Henry nodded silently, observing the city through the window. Lights twinkled, families passed by. The Christmas spirit was everywhere, except inside that taxi where a mother worked while her daughter waited at home. The taxi stopped in front of the imposing entrance of the Insignia Hotel. The crescent-shaped structure, illuminated by bluish lights on Christmas Eve, contrasted with the conventional buildings around it. Clara stopped the taximeter and turned to inform him of the fare. That'll be $57.40, she said, returning to her professional posture. Henry looked once more at the photo frame on the dashboard before taking his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. Your daughter, he began, hesitating for a moment. Does she believe in Santa Claus? The question caught Clara off guard. Why would a stranger be interested in that? Yes, she replied, allowing a tired smile to appear on her face. She wrote him a letter last week. She asked for a talking doll and a storybook. And what will happen when she wakes up tomorrow? He asked, his tone devoid of judgment, just genuinely curious. Clara swallowed hard. The rag doll she had managed to buy was pretty, but it was far from the talking doll Sophia so desired, after seeing it on television. She'll get a doll, she replied simply, omitting that it wouldn't be her daughter's dream doll. Santa Claus always shows up, even when the budget is tight. Henry listened slowly, as if making a decision. Instead of handing over the fare money, he put his wallet away and took out his cell phone. "You said you're going to work until after midnight?" he asked, his fingers sliding across the device's screen. "Yes, sir," Clara replied, starting to feel uncomfortable with the turn of the conversation. She'd had passengers try to flirt before, and this didn't seem like the time for it. "I have a proposal for you," Henry said, looking up from his phone. "It's nothing improper," he quickly added, noticing her cautious expression. "I'm willing to pay $5,000 for a special ride." Clara's eyes widened. $5,000 was more than she earned in an entire month. "What kind of ride?" she asked, suspicion evident in her voice. "I need to stop at a few places before midnight," he explained. "After that, you'll be free to go home to your daughter, with $5,000 in your pocket." The offer was too tempting to ignore, but years on the streets of New York City had taught Clara to be cautious with proposals that seemed too good to be true. "What exactly would I have to do?" she asked, turning in her seat to face him directly. "First, take me to my apartment to pick up a few things," Henry replied calmly. "Then stop at a few stores I know will be open late, and finally," he paused, "take me to your home to meet your daughter." Clara felt her blood run cold. For a moment, all the fatigue disappeared, replaced by a fierce protective instinct. "No way," she replied firmly, her hand already on the seatbelt. "Please pay the fare and get out of the taxi." Henry seemed genuinely surprised by her reaction. "No, wait, I think you misunderstood," he said, raising his hands in a pacifying gesture. "Let me explain better." "There's nothing to explain," Clara cut him off, fear giving way to anger. "I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not bringing a stranger near my daughter. Not for $5,000. Not for—" Henry took a deep breath, realizing how his words must have sounded. "My name is Henry Baston," he said slowly. "I'm the CEO of Apex Digital. I'm not a predator. I'm just someone who—" He hesitated, seeming to choose his words. "Someone who has no family to spend Christmas with and who was touched by your situation." Clara narrowed her eyes, still suspicious. "You expect me to believe that a millionaire CEO decided to take a regular taxi on Christmas Eve?" Henry smiled slightly. "You can Google my name," he suggested, handing her his business card. "Sometimes I prefer to go unnoticed. Chauffeur-driven cars attract too much attention." Clara took her phone with slightly trembling hands and typed his name. The results appeared instantly. Henry Baston, 41, founder and CEO of Apex Digital, one of the country's largest technology companies. Several photos showed the same man who was sitting in the back seat of her taxi. "Why?" she began, confused. "Why would you care about my situation?" Henry looked out the window for a moment before replying. "Because I've been on the other side," he finally said. "My mother was also a single parent and worked 2 jobs to support me. There were many Christmases when she couldn't be with me." He paused, his eyes lost in some distant memory. "What I'm proposing is simple. I want to help you and your daughter have a happy Christmas. With no ulterior motives, no hidden conditions. Just a gesture of kindness, let's say." Clara still hesitated. Her maternal protective instinct, fighting against her financial need, and the desperate desire to be with her daughter that night. "How can I trust you?" she finally asked. Henry thought for a moment. "We can do everything out in the open," he replied. "First, we'll go get the presents. Then you can call your neighbor and tell her you're bringing someone. We can agree on a code word, something only you and she know, for her to use if she notices anything suspicious. And you'll be by my side the whole time." The proposal was reasonable, and the suggested precautions showed that he understood her concerns. Still, years of hardship had taught Clara to doubt unexpected acts of kindness. "Why would you do this?" Her voice was softer now. "Why me? Why today?" Henry smiled melancholically. Let's just say I'm trying to reclaim a bit of the Christmas spirit I've lost over the years, he replied. And you reminded me how much my mother sacrificed for me. Perhaps it's a way to give back, even if not directly to her. He extended his hand with some bills. Here's $1,000 in advance. You'll receive the other $4,000 when we finish tonight, regardless of your decision about letting me meet your daughter. Clara looked at the money, feeling the weight of overdue bills, pending rent, the eviction notice. With that amount, she could solve her most urgent problems and still buy decent presents for Sophia. And most importantly, she could be with her before midnight. Why don't you tell me more about this plan while we drive to your apartment? She finally suggested, putting the taxi in motion. Henry smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his tired eyes. It's the first step to an unforgettable Christmas, he said, putting his phone in his pocket. For all of us. Clara was still not completely convinced, but something in his sincerity made her keep driving. The taxi left the hotel and re-entered the city traffic, now a little less congested. Where's your apartment? She asked, adjusting the rearview mirror. Upper East Side, Henry replied, on Greenland Street. Do you know it? Clara nodded. It was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, which made his story even more plausible. As she drove, she occasionally observed the man in the rearview mirror. He looked nothing like the image she had of a millionaire CEO. There was no arrogance in his gestures, nor impatience in his words, just a melancholic calm and a gaze that she now realized carried its own dose of loneliness. How long have you been a taxi driver? He asked, breaking the silence that had settled. 3 years, Clara replied. After Sophia's father left, I needed a job with flexible hours to take care of her. And before that, I was an administrative assistant at a construction company, she said, remembering a life that seemed to have happened in another existence. I had a reasonable salary, health insurance, prospects for growth, but when I got pregnant, she didn't need to finish the sentence. It was a story all too common in the country. Women who lost career opportunities when they became mothers, especially single mothers. Apex Digital has a policy to support single mothers and fathers, Henry commented, as if thinking aloud. On-site daycare, flexible hours, extended leave. Clara smiled without humor. That must be great for those who get a job there, she replied. But I doubt they'd hire someone without a completed college degree and with a 3-year gap in their resume. Henry didn't reply immediately, seeming to consider something. The taxi turned onto Greenland Street, where luxurious buildings rose, all decorated for Christmas with elegant lights and ornaments. She parked in front of the indicated address, a building with a modern facade and an impeccable doorman. Wait here, Henry requested. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Clara nodded, watching him enter the building after greeting the doorman by name. As soon as she was alone, she took out her phone and called Mrs. Elvira. How's Sophia? She asked as soon as the elderly woman answered. She's fine, dear, the neighbor replied with a tired voice. She ended up falling asleep on the couch while waiting for you. She asked about 20 times what time you'd arrive. Clara felt her heart tighten. Tell her I'll be home earlier than expected, she said, a genuine smile appearing on her lips, and that perhaps Christmas will be more special than we imagined. Has something happened, dear? Mrs. Elvira asked, curiosity evident in her voice. Maybe, Clara replied, looking at the building Henry had entered. I'm not sure yet, but I think... She hesitated. I think a little Christmas miracle might be happening. Exactly 11 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and Henry emerged carrying 2 large bags and an executive briefcase. He was now dressed in more casual clothes, dark jeans and a navy blue sweater that replaced the formal suit. The doorman rushed to help him, but he gently refused and headed to the taxi. Clara observed the transformation with curiosity. Without the suit, he seemed less intimidating, more human. Henry put the bags in the trunk and got back into the back seat. Where to now? Clara asked, starting the car. The plaza at Herald Square, he replied, checking his watch. We still have time before they close for the holiday. The taxi glided through the decorated streets, now less congested, as people reached their Christmas destinations. Small cotton flakes simulated snow in the shop windows, an irony on a warm December night in New York City. May I ask what you're planning? Clara ventured, adjusting the rearview mirror to see him better. Henry smiled, seeming more relaxed in his casual clothes. "I want your daughter to have the Christmas she deserves," he replied simply.
And
"I want you to be there to see her face when she wakes up tomorrow morning." Clara felt her throat tighten with emotion. 3 years as a taxi driver had hardened her heart, making her skeptical of disinterested kindness. But there was something in the way Henry spoke, a melancholic sincerity that made her want to believe. "She asked for a talking doll," she commented softly. "I saw it in the toy store window at the mall. It costs almost 1/3 of my rent." Henry nodded, making a mental note. What else would she like? What would truly make her happy? Clara thought, for a moment, allowing herself to imagine a world where financial limitations didn't exist. She loves storybooks. We always borrow them from the municipal library, but she dreams of having her own books with her name written in them. A soft smile formed on her lips, and she added, "She always mentions she'd like a princess dress, like the girl on TV, I think, from some cartoon." Henry listened attentively, as if each word was an important instruction for a valuable project. "What about you?" he asked, surprising her. "What would you like for Christmas?" The question caught her off guard. How long had it been since she had thought about presents for herself? Years, perhaps, since Sophia was born and all her priorities changed. "Me?" she repeated, almost incredulous. "I don't need presents. Being with my daughter would be enough." "I understand that," Henry replied with a nod. "But if you could have something, anything, what would it be?" Clara thought as she maneuvered the taxi toward the mall. What did she truly desire? A better apartment, financial security? The answer came from an unexpected place, from an almost forgotten wish. "A book," she finally said. 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. "I started reading it at the municipal library years ago, before Sophia was born, but I never managed to finish it. I always wanted my own copy." Henry smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "A book," he repeated, as if the answer pleased him. "An excellent choice." The plaza at Herald Square appeared before them, its Christmas lights shining brightly against the night sky. Clara parked the taxi at the main entrance, but before she could turn off the engine, Henry handed her a black card. "My corporate card," he explained. "I want you to come in with me and choose the presents for Sophia. You know her tastes better than anyone." Clara looked at the card as if it were an alien object. "I can't accept this," she protested. "You're already doing too much." "I'm not giving it to you," Henry clarified. "I'm asking for your help to choose the right presents. Consider it part of your job tonight." He spoke with such naturalness that Clara almost believed it was a common request. After a moment of hesitation, she accepted the card and put it in her purse. "I'll park properly," she said, turning on the hazard lights, "and then we can go in." The mall was still relatively crowded, with last-minute shoppers looking for gifts before closing. Clara felt out of place walking beside Henry, as if she were in a world she didn't belong to. Her taxi driver's uniform, black pants, and a yellow polo shirt contrasted with the elegant clothes of the usual patrons of the plaza. "Don't worry about it," Henry said, noticing her discomfort. "No one is paying attention." He was right, of course. On Christmas Eve, everyone was too busy with their own shopping to notice a taxi driver out of her natural habitat. The first stop was the toy store. Clara walked straight to the doll section and found exactly what Sophia had asked for. A doll with brown curly hair that sang lullabies when hugged. She picked it up carefully, as if it were made of crystal. "She'll love it," she murmured, more to herself than to Henry. "Put it in the cart," he encouraged, grabbing a shopping cart, "and let's look for some more options. Every child deserves more than one gift for Christmas." Clara hesitated. "I don't want her to get spoiled." "Don't worry," Henry reassured. "Some practical things, some fun things, a balance." They walked through the store aisles with Clara carefully selecting items she knew would delight Sophia. A set of storybooks with colorful covers, a small doctor's kit, a profession the girl said she wanted to pursue when she grew up, a forest animal puzzle, a shimmering blue dress that reminded her of a cartoon princess, and a new backpack to replace the old one that was already tearing at the seams. Each item she placed in the cart made her heart race, both with joy and a strange guilt. She had never been able to give her daughter so many things at once. Part of her feared that Sophia would get used to a standard impossible to maintain. "She'll think Santa Claus suddenly got rich," she commented, trying to sound light-hearted, but the concern showed in her voice. Henry noticed her uneasiness. "We can say some of the presents are mine, not Santa's," he suggested. "Like a family friend who showed up on Christmas Eve." Clara considered the suggestion. A family friend. The description seemed strangely fitting for someone she had met less than 2 hours ago, but who was about to completely transform her and Sophia's Christmas. After paying for the small mountain, 12 presents, Clara avoided looking at the total amount on the terminal. They headed to a bookstore in the mall. Henry immediately picked up a hardcover copy of 100 Years of Solitude from the commemorative edition. "For you," he said simply, placing the book in her hands. Clara ran her fingers over the illustrated cover, feeling the texture of the paper, such a simple object. Yet it represented something she had long set aside. Time for herself, for her own interests and pleasures. "Thank you," she said, her voice slightly choked. "But you didn't have to." "Everyone needs a good book," Henry interrupted softly, "especially mothers who dedicate all their time to their children." They bought a few more children's books, including an illustrated edition of classic fairy tales. When they left the bookstore, Henry checked his watch again. "We still have an hour before the stores close," he observed. "One more stop?" Clara looked confused at the bags they were already carrying. "What else could we buy? We already have more than enough." Henry smiled enigmatically. "Something for you, something special for Christmas Eve." Before she could protest, he gently guided her to a women's clothing store. Clara felt even more out of place there among the elegant pieces and prices she could never afford. "I can't," she began to say, but Henry interrupted her again. "Just one dress," he said, "to celebrate the Christmas with your daughter, something that makes you feel special on the most special night of the year." There was something in the way he spoke, without pity or condescension, just a sincere kindness that made Clara yield. An attendant approached, and Henry explained that they needed a dress for a Christmas celebration. The attendant assessed Clara with a professional eye, completely ignoring her taxi driver's uniform. "I have some options that would be perfect," she said, leading them through the store. Clara tried on 3 dresses, feeling like a teenager going to her first prom. The third, a simple but elegant dark red dress that fit her body perfectly, made her eyes shine when she saw herself in the mirror. How long had it been since she had seen herself like that? As a woman, not just as Sophia's mother or the taxi driver passengers barely noticed. When she came out of the fitting room, she realized Henry was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. There was admiration there, certainly, but also something more, a kind of recognition. "Perfect," he simply said. As the attendant wrapped the dress, Clara noticed Henry discreetly selecting a golden scarf and a small jewelry box from the accessories section, adding them to the purchase without comment. They left the mall laden with bags, the New York City sky now completely dark, dotted with a few stubborn stars that managed to shine through the city's light pollution. In the taxi, Henry helped organize all the purchases in the trunk. "What time is it?" Clara asked, suddenly worried about the time. "Almost 10:30, Henry replied, checking his watch. "We still have time." "Time for what?" she questioned, her curiosity mixed with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. Henry smiled, that smile that now began to seem familiar. "To transform a common apartment into a Christmas scene worthy of Sophia's dreams," he replied, closing the trunk. "And for you to be home when the clock strikes midnight." The taxi drove through the streets of New York City, now significantly emptier. As she drove, Clara called Mrs. Elvira again to let her know she would be home earlier than expected. "How's Sophia?" she asked, her heart racing at the thought of her daughter. "She's sleeping like an angel," the elderly woman replied, her voice tired but gentle. "She tried to stay awake, the poor dear, said she wanted to see Santa Claus arrive." Clara smiled, imagining her daughter fighting sleep, determined to wait for the mythical visitor. "I'm bringing a friend," she said hesitantly, looking in the rearview mirror at Henry, who pretended not to be listening. "He's going to help me with some things for Sophia's Christmas." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "What kind of friend?" Mrs. Elvira asked. suspicion evident in her voice. "A trustworthy friend," Clara replied, choosing her words carefully. "Mrs. Elvira, remember when I said that one? Day Sophia's guardian angel would appear. I think he finally decided to show himself." The reference to a private conversation they had had months before seemed to reassure the elderly woman. "I understand," she said, with a different tone in her voice. "The door is unlocked. I'll be waiting for you." Clara hung up and took a deep breath. Part of her still couldn't believe what was happening. What were the chances of a millionaire getting into her taxi on Christmas Eve and deciding to transform her life? It seemed like the plot of one of those sugary Christmas movies that played on television, not something that happened in real life, especially not in the life of a single taxi driver from Queens. "Everything all right?" Henry asked, noticing her pensive expression. "I'm trying to understand why you're doing all this," she replied honestly. "People like you usually don't care about people like me." Henry looked out the window for a moment, observing the Christmas decorations blurring past. "People like me," he repeated as if testing the words. "You think you know me because you know my title and my net worth?" There was a sadness in his voice that surprised Clara. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to offend." "You didn't," he assured her. "That's a natural assumption, but let me tell you something that isn't in magazine articles or on Wikipedia pages." He paused, as if organizing his thoughts. "When I was young, my mother worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses. On Christmas Eve, one of the families she worked for asked her to stay late, promising a generous bonus. She couldn't refuse. The rent was overdue, as were my school supplies for the following year." Clara listened attentively, unconsciously slowing the taxi. "I stayed with the neighbor, an elderly lady like your Mrs. Elvira. I waited and waited, but I fell asleep before midnight. When I woke up the next morning, I found my mother sleeping in the kitchen chair, exhausted, still in her clothes from the day before. Beside our tiny Christmas tree, there was a present wrapped in grocery store paper, a small remote control car, the only gift she could buy with the bonus from that night's work." Henry paused again, his voice slightly choked by the emotion of the memory. "What struck me most wasn't the gift itself, but the fact that she was there, even if only for a few hours, before she had to leave again for another job. It was the first and last time I saw her cry when I asked if she had seen Santa Claus." Clara felt a lump in her throat. The story was painfully familiar. "When you said you wanted to be with your daughter this Christmas," Henry continued, "something inside me just connected, as if I could somehow change that night from 30 years ago." The taxi stopped at a red light, and in the silence that followed, Clara realized silent tears were streaming down her face. She quickly wiped them away. "Thank you for telling me that," she said softly. Henry seemed equally moved by his own story. "So when you ask why I'm doing this, the answer is simple. Because someone should have done it for my mother. And because I can." The light turned green and Clara accelerated smoothly, turning in the direction of Queens. 10 minutes later, she parked in front of a small 4-story building without an elevator on a quiet residential street. "It's here," she announced, a little embarrassed by the simplicity of the place. Henry got out of the car and began to take the bags from the trunk. Clara opened the ground-floor apartment, where an elderly woman with grey hair and a kind face lived. "Mrs. Elvira, this is Henry," she introduced. "Henry, this is Mrs. Elvira, the person who makes it possible for me to work and raise Sophia." Henry extended his hand politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Clara speaks very highly of you." Mrs. Elvira shook his hand, assessing him with the keen eye of someone who had lived long enough to quickly judge character. He seems like a good man," she finally declared, as if giving her official approval. "Sophia is sleeping in your apartment, dear. I made sure she brushed her teeth well beforehand, as you always insist." Clara smiled, grateful for the millionth time for having found such a thoughtful neighbor. "Thank you so much for taking care of her today, Mrs. Elvira. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Oh, no need to thank me," the elderly woman replied, waving as if dismissing the gratitude. "That girl is like a granddaughter to me. Now go. You have less than an hour until midnight." Carrying all the bags, they climbed the 3 flights of stairs to Clara's apartment on the top floor. Before opening the door, she turned to Henry, suddenly nervous. "It's very simple," she warned. "Nothing compared to what you must be used to." Henry shook his head. "Remember the story I told you? I grew up in a very similar place. Please don't worry about it. Clara took a deep breath and unlocked the door, revealing a small two-room apartment, impeccably clean but clearly worn by time. A tiny artificial Christmas tree, decorated with handmade ornaments, occupied a corner of the living room that also served as a kitchen. On the unfolded sofa bed, Sophia slept peacefully, her curly hair spread over the pillow, a slight smile on her lips, as if dreaming of something wonderful. Henry observed the apartment with respect, noticing the details that spoke of sacrifice and love. Sophia's drawings carefully affixed to the refrigerator with colorful magnets, photos of the girl at different ages framed on the wall, the improvised study corner with a plastic table and school supplies organized in recycled jars. "It's a home," he simply said. "A true home." Clara felt her chest warm with those words. In coordinated silence, they began to arrange the presents around the small Christmas tree. Henry took some items from his briefcase that Clara hadn't noticed before: colorful wrapping paper, bows, tags, and even small battery-operated Christmas lights that he skillfully arranged to complement the existing decorations. They worked in coordinated silence, wrapping the presents and arranging them artistically. Occasionally, they looked at Sophia to ensure she was still sleeping soundly. With each present placed, the small apartment transformed a little more, gaining the magic Clara had always wished to provide for her daughter. "We have one more thing," Henry whispered, taking a compact digital camera from his briefcase, "to capture the moment she wakes up tomorrow." Clara was too emotional to speak. When they finished, the result was impressive. A true Christmas scene, like those Sophia saw in library storybooks. Colorful presents, carefully wrapped twinkling lights, and even stockings hung with small chocolates and candies. Henry checked his watch. 15 minutes to midnight. "You should change," he gently suggested, referring to the new dress. Clara hesitated, looking at her sleeping daughter. "What if she wakes up and I'm not here?" "I'll keep watch," he promised. "At the first movement, I'll call you." After another moment of hesitation, Clara took the bag with the dress and went to the small bathroom. 20 minutes later, when she emerged, the transformation was remarkable. The dark red dress fit perfectly, highlighting her silhouette, which usually remained hidden under her practical taxi driver's uniform. She had tied her hair in a simple but elegant bun and applied a lipstick she saved for special occasions. Henry observed her with genuine admiration. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely. Clara felt her face warm, unaccustomed to compliments. A movement on the sofa bed caught her attention. Sophia was stirring, beginning to wake up. She quickly approached her daughter, sitting on the edge of the sofa. The girl's little eyes opened slowly, confused for a moment, until they focused on her mother's face. "Mummy," she whispered sleepily. "You're back?" "I'm back, my love," Clara replied, her voice choked with emotion. "Mommy's here." Sophia sat up, rubbing her eyes, and then noticed the dress. "You look like a princess," she exclaimed with childish admiration. Before Clara could reply, Sophia looked past her and saw Henry standing discreetly near the Christmas tree. The girl's eyes widened, first with apprehension, then with an expression of astonishment as she noticed the presents arranged around the tree. "Who is he, Mommy?" she asked without taking her eyes off the colorful packages. "Is he Santa Claus without the red suit?" Clara laughed, relieved by her daughter's reaction. Henry also smiled, approaching cautiously. "No, dear, this is Mr. Henry. He is—" Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. "He's a special friend who came to help us celebrate Christmas." Henry knelt at a respectful distance, getting to the girl's eye level. "Hello, Sophia," he said gently. "Your mother told me many good things about you." The girl studied him for a moment with the fearless curiosity of children. "Do you know Santa Claus?" she finally asked. Henry smiled, playing along. "Well, let's just say we're acquainted. He was very busy tonight, so he asked me to make sure all your presents arrived." Sophia's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. "It's Christmas already, Mommy. Can I open the presents now?" Clara looked at the clock too. 11:58 p.m. Almost, my love. Just 2 more minutes. Sophia was now fully awake, approaching the Christmas tree cautiously, as if fearing the presents would disappear if she got too close. "Are all these for me?" she asked incredulously. "Most of them?" "Yes," Clara replied, exchanging a knowing look with Henry. Some are for me too. The clock on the wall struck midnight, and as if on a magical cue, a distant church bell began to ring. "Merry Christmas, my love," Clara said, hugging her daughter. "Merry Christmas, Mommy," Sophia replied, practically vibrating with excitement. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Santa Claus's friend." Henry chuckled, genuinely charmed by the girl's spontaneity. "Merry Christmas, Sophia," he replied, observing mother and daughter with a smile that hid deep emotion, as if witnessing something he had waited his entire life to see. Sophia's joy, as she opened the presents, was contagious. Each unwrapped package provoked exclamations of surprise and delight that filled the small apartment. The much-desired talking doll brought silent tears to Clara's eyes when her daughter hugged it, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Henry remained slightly apart, sitting on a kitchen chair observing the scene with a serene smile. Occasionally he raised the camera to capture moments he knew would be precious. Sophia, trying on the princess dress over her pajamas, Clara helping her daughter assemble the puzzle, the girl's spontaneous hug upon discovering the storybooks. "Mommy, look, this one has my name," Sophia exclaimed, showing the first page of one of the books where Henry had discreetly written, "To Sophia, who has curious eyes and a brave heart. Merry Christmas." "It's true, my love," Clara replied, casting a grateful glance at Henry. After the initial euphoria, Sophia, still in her pajamas, now covered by the princess dress, timidly approached Henry. "Thank you, Mr. Santa Claus's friend," she said, swaying back and forth. "This was the best Christmas ever." Henry smiled, genuinely touched by the childish sincerity. "I'm very happy you liked it, Sophia. Your smile is the best present." The girl tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. "Are you going to spend Christmas with us?" she suddenly asked. The question caught both Henry and Clara by surprise. There was a moment of silence before he replied, "Well, it's already Christmas, isn't it? Technically, I'm already spending Christmas with you." Sophia shook her head, dissatisfied with the evasive answer. "No, I mean the whole day to eat French toast and panettone. Mommy bought just a little, but we can share." Clara felt her face burn with shame. The simplicity of the meal she had planned, some French toast bought at the neighborhood bakery and a small panettone on sale, seemed pathetic in front of someone like Henry. "Sophia, Mr. Henry probably has other plans for today," she quickly said. "Important people to visit." To her surprise, Henry shook his head. "Actually, I don't," he replied with disarming honesty. "I don't have family in New York City, and my friends are all with their own families today." Sophia's face lit up. "Then you can stay," she declared as if the matter was settled. "No one should be alone on Christmas, right, Mummy?" Clara found herself in a delicate position. On one hand, she felt they had already taken too much advantage of Henry's generosity. On the other, there was something in him, a loneliness she recognized well that made it impossible to send him away. "Of course, Mr. Henry is welcome to stay if he wishes," she finally said. "Our celebration is simple but heartfelt." Henry seemed genuinely touched by the invitation. "It would be an honor," he replied, "but with one condition, just call me Henry. Sir makes me feel like my father." Clara smiled and nodded. Sophia, satisfied with the outcome of the negotiation, turned her attention back to the talking doll. It was already past 1 a.m., but the girl showed no signs of tiredness, energized by the magic of the occasion. "She won't be sleeping any time soon," Clara commented, observing her daughter. "The excitement will keep her awake for hours." Henry smiled, watching the girl who was now assembling the puzzle, chatting animatedly with the doll as if it were a real friend. "I remember being like that too," he said. "Impossible to sleep on Christmas Eve." Clara went to the small kitchen and started preparing coffee. While the water boiled, she looked at the clock and then at Henry. "I didn't expect to have company today," she said apologetically. "I don't have much to offer besides coffee and these French toast slices." Henry stood up and approached the kitchen. "Can I help with anything?" She shook her head, still uncomfortable with the idea of a millionaire CEO in her tiny apartment. "Actually, I think I forgot something in the taxi," he suddenly said, snapping his fingers. "I'll be back in a minute." Before Clara could reply, he had already left through the door. She watched Sophia, who was now completely absorbed, assembling her puzzle, occasionally talking to the doll about where the pieces should go. Henry returned 5 minutes later, carrying 2 bags Clara hadn't noticed before. "What's that?" she asked curiously. "I thought we could improve the celebration a little," he replied, taking a bottle of sparkling wine, fine chocolates, fresh fruit, and several containers of food from a restaurant Clara recognized as one of the most expensive in the city. "You didn't have to," she began, but Henry interrupted her gently. "Please let me contribute," he said. "That's the least I can do for your hospitality." Clara relented, acknowledging that her almost empty refrigerator wouldn't offer much for the occasion. Together, they arranged the food on her best plates, a disparate collection she had accumulated over the years. Instead of seeming out of place, the gourmet meal on the simple plates had a special charm, as if symbolizing the improbable encounter between their worlds. Sophia was delighted with the sweets and fruits, especially the strawberries, which they rarely could afford due to the price. "Can we set a pretty table, Mummy? Like in the magazines we see at the supermarket?" The innocent question revealed a desire for those small normalities that Clara could rarely provide. With Henry's help, they organized a festive table in the center of the small apartment, using the candles she kept for emergencies during the frequent power outages in the neighborhood. Sitting around the improvised table with Sophia still wearing her princess dress over her pajamas, they formed a curious picture: the taxi driver in an elegant dress, the CEO in casual clothes, and the radiant girl at the center, connecting their very different worlds. "Can we make a toast?" Sophia asked, raising her glass of grape juice. "Like in the movies." Clara and Henry exchanged amused glances, raising their sparkling wine glasses. "What should we toast to?" Henry asked. Sophia thought for a moment, her small forehead furrowed in concentration. "To encounters," she finally declared. "That's what the teacher said, that Christmas is about special encounters." "To encounters," Henry agreed, gently clinking his glass against Clara's and then Sophia's cup. As they ate, Sophia entertained them with school stories and incessant questions about how Henry knew Santa Claus. He replied with creative stories that made the girl laugh, elaborating an imaginary world where executives and Santa Claus occasionally met in important meetings about global gift logistics. Clara observed the interaction, noticing how Henry seemed perfectly at ease talking to a 4-year-old, without condescension or impatience. It was a facet she would never expect to see in a high-ranking executive. "Do you have children?" she asked during a pause in the conversation. Henry shook his head. "No, I never married," he replied simply. But there was something in his tone that suggested a more complex story behind that direct answer. "Why?" Sophia asked with the typical frankness of children. "Sophia, you don't ask personal questions," Clara gently reprimanded. "That's a very personal question." Henry laughed, apparently not bothered. "It's all right," he assured. "It's a fair question." He turned to Sophia. "I like children very much. I think I just got lost along the way. I spent so much time building my company that I forgot to build other important things." The answer, though simplified for a child's understanding, carried a melancholy that did not escape Clara's notice. There was a vulnerability in that man that contrasted sharply with his public image of a successful executive. Sophia, satisfied with the answer, turned her attention back to the strawberry she was eating. Henry took the moment to change the subject. "And you, Clara, did you always want to be a taxi driver?" The question caught her by surprise. Few people were interested in her aspirations. "Actually, no," she replied honestly. "I was studying administration at night when I got pregnant. I had 1 year left to graduate. Mommy is very smart," Sophia interjected proudly. "She can do math in her head faster than a calculator." Henry smiled at the girl before turning back to Clara. "Why didn't you go back to study?" Clara sighed. "Time, money, mainly time. As a single mother, working and taking care of Sophia already consumes my whole day. Adding studies to the mix would be impossible." Henry listened empathetically. "And if you had the opportunity, if time and money were not obstacles?" The question hung in the air like a distant possibility. Clara allowed herself for a brief moment to imagine an alternative reality where she could pursue her own dreams without compromising her daughter's needs. "I would finish my degree," she finally replied. "I always dreamed of working with logistics. Ironically, I ended up doing it in another way, calculating routes through the city all day." The comment brought a smile to Henry's face, but his eyes revealed that he was seriously considering her words. Before he could reply, Sophia yawned deeply, the night's adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. "I think someone is ready for bed," Clara observed, acariciating her daughter's hair. "I'm not sleepy," Sophia protested, rubbing her eyes. "I want to stay awake with you and Henry." Clara exchanged a knowing look with Henry. "How about we read a story from your new books?" he suggested. "Just one before bed." The offer seemed acceptable to Sophia, who immediately selected one of the classic fairy tales. Clara helped her change from the princess dress into her pajamas, while Henry discreetly tidied up the small mess in the kitchen. When she returned with Sophia, Clara found Henry sitting on the sofa bed, the book open on his lap. Without hesitation, Sophia snuggled beside him, pulling Clara to join them. "Will you read, Henry?" the girl asked. "Mommy says everyone reads differently." "It would be an honor," he replied, opening the book to the story Sophia had chosen, How the Stars Were Born, a Native American legend. Henry's voice, normally used to command boardrooms and negotiate million-dollar contracts, completely transformed as he told the story. He modulated his tones, created different voices for each character, and made dramatic pauses at the right moments, keeping Sophia completely absorbed in the narrative. Clara watched enchanted, not only by the story, but by the unusual scene unfolding in her small apartment in the early hours of Christmas morning. Her daughter nestled comfortably between her and a stranger who had somehow, in a few hours, become much less strange. Even before the story ended, Sophia fell asleep, her head resting on Henry's arm, the new doll firmly hugged against her chest. Carefully not to wake her, Clara adjusted the pillows and covered her daughter with the blanket. "You're very good with children," she commented softly as they moved away to let Sophia sleep. Henry smiled, looking at the sleeping girl. "She's special," he replied simply. "She reminds me a lot of how I was at her age, curious, full of questions." They moved to the small kitchen, talking in low voices so as not to disturb Sophia's sleep. Through the window, they could see the first lights of Christmas morning beginning to appear on the New York City horizon. The first lights of Christmas morning filtered through the apartment's simple curtains. Clara prepared fresh coffee, while Henry watched the city awakening through the kitchen window. The silence between them was comfortable, as if they had known each other for years, not just a few hours. "How did you become what you are today?" Clara finally asked, serving 2 cups of coffee. "From a childhood with a single mother to CEO of one of the country's largest companies. It can't have been easy." Henry accepted the cup, his fingers briefly brushing hers. "It wasn't," he agreed, blowing on the hot coffee. "I studied on a full scholarship. I worked 3 different jobs during college. So I slept 4 hours a night." He paused, reflecting. "But I was lucky too. People who believed in me at the right time, opportunities I knew how to seize." "And your mother?" Clara asked. "Did she see your success?" A shadow passed over Henry's face. "Partially," he replied softly. "She fell ill when the company started to take off. I managed to provide the best treatments, a comfortable home, but..." He took a deep breath. "She passed away 5 years ago, cancer." "I'm so sorry," Clara said, lightly touching his arm. "You know what saddens me most?" Henry continued, looking at the apartment where Sophia slept peacefully. "That when I finally had the means to give her everything she always wanted, there wasn't much time left. I spent years building an empire to impress her, to repay her sacrifices. And when I succeeded, all she wanted was for me to have dinner with her on Sunday nights. She just wanted my presence." The confession, made in a low voice so as not to wake Sophia, carried the weight of deep regret. Clara then understood that the generosity of that night was not just about them. It was also about him, about filling a void that professional success could not touch. "That's why you're alone on Christmas," she concluded. It wasn't a question. Henry nodded. "I have colleagues, business partners, acquaintances. I receive dozens of invitations to parties and celebrations, but..." He made a vague gesture with his hand. "They're superficial connections. No one I truly want to share an important moment with." Clara watched him attentively, seeing beyond the public image of the successful businessman. She now saw a man who, despite all his achievements, carried a loneliness familiar to her. "Until last night, I would say the same," she commented, looking at her sleeping daughter, "that I only had Sophia, which was enough. But But sometimes you wonder what it would be like to have someone to share both the joys and the burdens, Henry completed, his eyes meeting hers. Clara felt surprised by the precision with which he had captured her feelings. A small movement on the sofa bed interrupted the moment. Sophia was starting to wake up, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mommy, Henry," the girl called, sitting up. "Didn't you sleep?" They exchanged a knowing smile before approaching. "We were talking, my love," Clara explained, sitting beside her daughter. Sophia looked at her own hands for a moment, as if organizing her thoughts before asking, "Henry, are you leaving now?" The question hung in the air, laden with more meaning than the girl could comprehend. Henry knelt to be at her eye level. "I need to go home at some point," he replied gently. "But that doesn't mean I can't come back to visit if your mother allows." Sophia's eyes turned hopefully to Clara, who felt her heart race at her daughter's expectation. "So of course you can come back," she replied, surprised by the naturalness of the answer. "Whenever you want." Henry's smile lit up his face in a way that instantly rejuvenated him. "Actually," he said as if gathering courage, "I have something to propose." Clara felt a pang of apprehension. This was how fairy tale stories began, inevitably ending in disappointment, with promises too grand to be kept. "Henry, you've already done more than enough," she began cautiously. "Wait, please," he interrupted gently. "It's not charity. It's a genuine proposal." He paused as if choosing his words carefully. "Apex Digital is expanding its logistics department. We need people who understand urban transportation in practice, who know the city, who know how to calculate efficient routes. People like you, Clara." She blinked, confused. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering an opportunity," he corrected her. "A paid internship while you finish your degree, with flexible hours and on-site daycare for Sophia. Afterward, depending on your performance, a permanent position." Clara felt as if the air had been sucked out of the apartment. It was exactly the kind of chance she had dreamed of, but that seemed impossible for a single mother without a diploma. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Because you have exactly the profile we're looking for," Henry replied sincerely. "Practical knowledge, determination, intelligence, the rest can be learned." Sophia looked from one to the other, not fully understanding the conversation, but sensing that something important was happening. "Are you going to work with Henry, Mummy?" she asked, hugging her new doll. Clara hesitated, her heart divided between the hope and the fear. The world had taught her to distrust offers that seemed too good to be true. "I don't know, my love. I need to think." "Of course," Henry said quickly, "no pressure. Here's my personal card." He extended a small card with his cell phone number handwritten on the back. "When you decide or if you have any questions, you can call me anytime." Clara accepted the card, her fingers trembling slightly. The simple gesture carried the weight of a choice that could completely change her life and Sophia's. A stronger ray of sun entered through the window, illuminating the small apartment with a golden light. Sophia suddenly got up, running to look out the window. "Look, Mummy, the sky is all colorful." It was true. The Christmas sunrise painted the New York City skyline in shades of orange, pink, and gold, a rare sight in a city usually covered by pollution. "It's beautiful," Clara murmured, joining her daughter at the window. Henry stood beside them, observing the natural spectacle. There was a moment of shared silence, three people united by chance, watching the first Christmas sunrise together. "You know," Henry finally said, "I had plans to spend the day alone at home working on some projects." "On Christmas?" Sophia asked, horrified by the idea. He smiled at the girl's sincerity. "Yes, on Christmas. But now—" He paused, looking at Clara with a silent question in his eyes. "I was wondering if you two would accept spending the day with me. We could go to the park, maybe have lunch somewhere special that's open today." Sophia jumped up excitedly. "Can we, Mommy, please?" Clara felt an emotion both strange and familiar. It was hope, she recognized. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, life could offer second chances. Not just for her, but for all of them. "Yes," she finally replied. "That would be wonderful." Henry's smile lit up his face in a way that Clara realized she wanted to see more often. It wasn't the calculated smile of an executive, but that of a man who found something he didn't even know he was looking for. Sophia ran to get dressed, carefully choosing from her clothes the one that would be perfect for a Christmas outing. While the girl got ready, Clara and Henry remained near the window. their hands almost touching on the sill. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" she asked, confused. "I should be thanking you for everything you've done." "For letting me in," he replied simply. "Not just into your apartment, but," he made a gesture that seemed to encompass something larger, ineffable, "into your life, into your lives." Clara then understood that somehow she and Sophia had given Henry a gift as valuable as the ones he had brought, the feeling of belonging to something, of being part of a genuine moment. "I guess Christmas has those things," she said softly. "Sometimes the gifts that truly matter don't come wrapped." Henry smiled, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. Slowly, almost timidly, his hand covered hers on the windowsill. "Can I make a confession?" he asked, his voice little more than a whisper. Clara felt unable to look away. "When you said, 'I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas,' something inside me changed, as if I had waited my whole life to hear those words, to find someone who understood what truly matters." The sincerity in his voice touched Clara deeply. It was strange and wonderful how life could change completely in a single night, how strangers could become so important in a matter of hours. "I'm ready," Sophia announced, returning to the living room, wearing her new dress over a long-sleeved shirt, the talking doll firmly held in one arm. Clara and Henry moved slightly apart, but something had changed between them. An invisible bridge built through shared confidences and moments of vulnerability. "You look beautiful, Princess," Henry said, making an exaggerated bow that drew giggles from Sophia. "Let's get ready too," Clara suggested, still feeling the warmth of his hand on hers. As they prepared to leave, moving through the small apartment with a surprising familiarity, Clara realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about the future with apprehension, but with expectation. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, if she would accept the job offer, if her connection with Henry would deepen or fade with time. But somehow that no longer scared her. The important thing was the present, her happy daughter, a new friend or perhaps something more, who had entered their lives in the most unexpected way, and the comforting feeling that sometimes Christmas miracles really did happen, not with magic or fantasy, but through genuine encounters between people who, in some way, needed each other. When they finally left the apartment, the Christmas sun shone fully over New York City, like a silent promise that better days were ahead. And as she closed the door behind her, Clara realized that she had received much more than just being with her daughter that Christmas. She had received the chance for a new beginning, a gift no money in the world could buy. If this story moved your emotions, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Every day we bring new stories that explore the complexity of life and the beauty of human feelings. Share your impressions in the comments. We love reading your reactions and knowing which moments touched your heart the most. And don't miss our upcoming content, where we will continue to explore the wonderful surprises that fate has in store for us. Until the next story.